Under the ancient fig tree, Buddha seated himself amidst his disciples. His calm presence filling the air with serenity, he surveyed their faces. A mix of eagerness and curiosity. Before speaking with the wisdom of 1,000 lifetimes, there exists a thorn in many lives. One that pierces deeply, causing pain with every step we take, he began. His voice was gentle, yet firm. A melodic rhythm that seemed to resonate with the truth within each listener's heart. The disciples listened intently, their robes fluttering in the soft breeze as birds chirped in the distant trees. A thorn may be hidden beneath layers of attachment, fear, or duty, but its pain reveals its true nature, Buddha said. His gaze rested on a young monk whose furrowed brow betrayed a troubled mind. And he extended a comforting hand. The monk spoke hesitantly. Master, what if the thorn is one we cherish, tied to us by bonds of love and duty? Buddha nodded, a faint smile gracing his lips, and replied, love does not justify pain. Attachment does not equal nourishment. The words rippled through the group, stirring thoughts and reflections, each monk recalling the thorns that dwelled in their lives. He continued, compassion begins within. It is the act of removing harm, not only for oneself but for all connected. The young monk lowered his gaze, contemplating the paradox of loving someone while protecting his own peace. Buddha motioned toward the horizon, where the sun painted the sky with hues of orange and red. Observe its beauty, he said. It radiates without clinging to the clouds. It warms without burdening the earth. This is the power of boundaries, he added. The disciples nodded, the metaphor unfolding in their minds, allowing them to visualize relationships from a fresh perspective. One older monk asked, but Master, what if setting boundaries is met with anger or resistance? Will it not lead to discord? Buddha turned to him, his eyes gleaming with understanding. Discord arises not from boundaries but from attachment to toxicity. His words hung in the air like the distant hum of a sacred chant, carrying profound clarity and insight. He drew a line in the earth with his finger, creating an image to illustrate his teachings. This is peace, he said. Crossing this boundary brings disturbance, not because the line exists, but because it was disrespected by oneself or others. The monks murmured among themselves, realizing the delicate balance between maintaining serenity and navigating the reactions of others. Buddha spoke again. Boundaries are acts of love and self-respect. They create space for growth, free from harm and negativity. The gentle breeze grew stronger, carrying the fragrance of blooming flowers from the nearby garden to the circle of disciples. Buddha continued, to let go of toxic people is not abandonment but the act of removing obstacles to kindness and peace. The monks listened closely, the distant sound of a temple bell weaving into the fabric of Buddha's words. He gestured toward a thorn bush that grew at the edge of the monastery's path. Approach it, feel its thorns, he instructed. The disciples hesitated, but one brave monk stepped forward, carefully touching the bush and recoiling at its sharpness. The thorn does not hurt because it exists. It hurts because we cling to it or fail to remove it, Buddha said. He spoke slowly, allowing the analogy to seep into their minds, its simplicity lending weight to its deep wisdom. The thorn bush swayed gently, its movements reflecting the ebb and flow of life and the necessity of mindful decisions. Buddha said, the thorn is not your enemy. It is your teacher, guiding you to recognize the harm and act wisely. The disciples meditated upon the thorn bush, their eyes closed, embracing the silence as it revealed their own truths. The disciple frowned, his thoughts already stirring with questions about the meaning hidden in his master's words. But Master, the stream cannot control the rains or the winds that disturb it, the disciple replied thoughtfully. Let go not out of anger but out of compassionate understanding. The disciples nodded in agreement, realizing the act of release was not one of rejection but of honoring their inner peace. The forest echoed with birdsong as Buddha sat silently. His teachings spread like ripples in a pond. The journey to inner peace began anew for Ananda and those gathered under the Bodhi tree's shade. The monks bowed deeply, gratitude in their gestures as Buddha's words resonated in the chambers of their hearts and minds. The fig tree's roots twisted into the earth, symbolic of the grounding needed to remove the thorn and grow peacefully. Buddha stepped away, his form blending into the twilight, leaving his disciples to ponder the lesson beneath the stars. Another day, Buddha sat by the flowing river, his tranquil figure reflecting the calmness of the water beside him. The disciples gathered under the blue sky, the sound of the river blending with the whispers of the gentle breeze. Buddha held a humble water jar in his hands, its earthen texture telling stories of the labor that created it. He turned to the group, his eyes a well of compassion, and began his teaching with words that soothed like balm. This jar is empty now, yet it holds the potential to contain what fills it, be it pure or polluted. The disciples leaned closer, their curiosity palpable. As Buddha gently dipped the jar into the river and brought it up, he continued. When the jar fills with clear water, it nourishes life, but muddy water fouls its purpose, burdening the essence. One disciple asked, "Master, how do we ensure that only purity enters the jar when the river carries mud and debris?" Buddha smiled, his gaze falling upon the disciple as he poured the muddy water from the jar into the earth. Emptying the jar is an act of wisdom, cleansing it from what does not serve its purpose or bring it serenity. His gentle gestures turned into symbols of truth, speaking as much as his words to the hearts of the gathered disciples. Buddha raised the jar once more, this time allowing only the pure water near the surface to enter its mouth. As the jar is, so is your heart. It gathers from the river of life what you choose to welcome, he said. The disciples nodded, reflecting on their own jars, hearts burdened by toxins they had accepted knowingly or unknowingly in their lives. He continued, "You must learn the art of choosing, the mindful act of welcoming only that which brings nourishment and balance." Another disciple asked, "Master, what of those whose actions continuously muddy the waters we try to cleanse?" Buddha responded, "You cannot purify others. You can only choose what enters your jar and guard it with compassionate boundaries." His voice carried strength without harshness, a melody that harmonized with the river's flow as if nature echoed his truths. Buddha gestured for each disciple to take an imaginary jar, visualizing it as their heart, and instructed them to observe its state. The disciples closed their eyes, following his guidance, immersing themselves in the meditation that revealed their heart's current burdens. He said, "Observe the contents of your jar. Recognize what brings light and release what weighs heavily, disturbing the purity within." One young monk opened his eyes, speaking hesitantly, "Master, my jar feels dark. The weight of resentment clouds its peace. Master, your lessons leave footprints in my heart that will guide me through storms yet to come." The disciple said. The Buddha simply smiled, his silence richer than words, and the moment carried the promise of growth. The disciples contemplated his words, embracing the notion that forgiveness was not weakness but an act of strength and liberation. Buddha added, "The river of life flows endlessly. You are not bound to hold its mud but free to welcome its clarity." The temple bell tolled in the distance, resonating like a sacred call, amplifying Buddha's wisdom as it echoed across the land. Buddha said, "Your peace is yours to protect, just as the jar protects the water within, guarding it from harm or pollution." His words inspired the disciples to visualize the act of letting go, their jars emptying of resentment, doubt, and negativity. He instructed, "Each day, Look within your jar. Ask yourself, does this water nourish my spirit or weigh it down? One disciple asked, Master, what if the jar itself is cracked, unable to hold even clear water without losing it? Buddha replied, healing the jar is possible. It requires mindfulness, self-care, and the gentle stitching of patience and love. His response resonated deeply, reminding each disciple that self-care was not selfish but a sacred practice of nurturing inner peace. Another disciple leaned forward, her hands resting on her knees as curiosity burned in her gaze. Master, how do we remove what overwhelms us? How do we empty our minds of endless worries and fears? She asked. The disciples meditated by the river, the sound of flowing water guiding them into a serene state of introspection and clarity. Buddha walked along the riverbank, his footsteps light yet purposeful. As he observed the natural harmony that surrounded him, he said, nature does not hold on to what does not serve it. The flowing river teaches the art of letting go effortlessly. His teachings lingered in the air, each word a seed planted in the minds and hearts of his disciples for growth and reflection. Buddha turned to face them once more, his figure radiant with the wisdom that came from lifetimes of understanding and compassion. Boundaries protect the pure water. They allow it to exist, unhindered and free, amidst the chaos of life's muddy currents. He smiled, his expression warm and loving. As his disciples bowed deeply, gratitude shining in their gestures like morning light, the jar sat quietly by the river, a symbol of the lesson, a reminder of the choice to guard peace and protect purity. Buddha left, his presence carried by the wind, leaving his disciples to ponder the depth of his teachings under the open sky. Another day, Buddha stood by the lotus pond, its blossoms radiant despite the murky water from which they emerged. The disciples gathered quietly, their robes swaying as a gentle wind rippled across the surface of the serene pond. Buddha gestured to the lotus flowers, his voice tender as he began to share another lesson of profound wisdom. Behold the lotus, he said, born from the mud, yet it rises above, untainted and untouched by its surroundings. The disciples watched the flowers closely, their vibrant petals shimmering under the sunlight, a stark contrast to the muddy water below. The lotus symbolizes the essence of life's challenges, Buddha continued, teaching us to bloom despite the mud of difficult circumstances. A young disciple asked, Master, how can we rise above the murky waters of toxic relationships and remain pure like the lotus? Buddha nodded, his gaze fixed on the disciple, and replied, by embracing boundaries, you create the space to bloom freely. He plucked a single lotus petal delicately, its softness a testament to the strength hidden within its graceful form. Boundaries are not walls, Buddha explained, but bridges that connect compassion with wisdom, protecting your peace without abandoning your love. The disciples reflected on his words, their thoughts blooming like the flowers before them, each seeking clarity in their personal struggles. Another disciple asked, Master, how do we maintain compassion while setting boundaries with those who bring harm or discord? Buddha smiled softly and said, compassion means understanding the mud, not allowing it to cling to your roots or tarnish your bloom. He gestured toward the pond, where the roots of the lotus plants intertwined with the mud below, yet remained steadfast. Notice the roots, he said, firmly planted in the mud, yet they draw only what is needed to nurture the flower. The disciples nodded, observing the balance between acceptance of the environment and the determination to rise above its influence. Buddha continued, this is the art of boundaries. To draw from relationships only what nurtures and supports your growth and well-being. Ananda nodded, his eyes reflecting hope, his heart yearning for understanding. The disciples gathered closer, their anticipation palpable, the air charged with reverence. Buddha picked up a small bowl of water from beside him and placed it between them. Look into this water. Ananda, Buddha said, his voice soft but deliberate, guiding Ananda toward reflection. The lotus cannot bloom if its roots suffocate in mud. Likewise, you cannot thrive if you endure what destroys your spirit. The disciples meditated upon this truth, their breathing synchronizing with the rhythm of the ripples on the lotus pond. Buddha said, boundaries do not harm, they invite harmony. They allow relationships to flourish without draining or damaging your essence. My reflection is unclear, Ananda answered, his voice tinged with wonder and curiosity. The lesson unfolding before him. Buddha smiled, his serenity mirrored in the disrupted water's surface. To set boundaries with love is not rejection but a reflection of true understanding and care. He gestured toward the lotus pond once more, highlighting a flower that grew amidst the densest clusters of mud and roots. The lotus grows not in anger toward the mud but with gentle strength, choosing to bloom above it. Untouched, Buddha said. The disciples watched the flower closely, its pristine petals a metaphor for rising above life's challenges without bitterness or resentment. Buddha continued, when you rise, do so with humility and grace. For boundaries are not weapons but instruments of peaceful coexistence. He knelt by the pond, scooping a handful of water, allowing it to drip between his fingers back into the earth. Let go of the need to cling, to control. In letting go, you free yourself and others to find their own path. The disciples bowed their heads in gratitude, feeling the weight of their own toxic ties beginning to dissolve in the evening light. Buddha rose, his form illuminated by the last rays of the setting sun, a symbol of enlightenment amidst the approaching night. He said, bloom as the lotus blooms, in stillness and strength, connected to the earth but rising toward the infinite sky. The disciples bowed deeply, their hearts and minds filled with clarity. As Buddha's footsteps faded into the quiet of the dusk, the disciples murmured softly among themselves, the simplicity of Buddha's teaching resonating deeply within their hearts. Ananda closed his eyes briefly, the imagery of clouds and ripples settling in his mind like seeds in fertile soil. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.